Hello and welcome back to the Insight. It's that time, Sunday. You're having your coffee, your dinner, or like me, you're having your butter chicken if you want to keep it classy and cultural. Um, and you're thinking, what should I listen to? What should I watch? Well, obviously, we're now available on YouTube and you can watch on Spotify. That's because it's the videos are going around everywhere. But more importantly, we're going to talk about Spurs against Liverpool. Liverpool just beat them 6-3 and just getting battered on TV. I've just done a TikTok raving about a certain player who we're going to talk about. And Pythag, as usual, where do we start? I'll let you start. What are your general thoughts on the game today?
I just thought Liverpool looked so fluid in attack. Now I think everyone's said that Liverpool are the most fluent attacking team in the league this season. The only rival would probably be Chelsea.
Mm,
Um, but today it was like everyone was worried about Liverpool potentially facing a little mini crisis in terms of the performance levels, the energy levels are beginning to dip. But they kind of answered that in an emphatic fashion today, where the second wind almost kicked in straight away, which was really strange. They looked so sharp on the ball. I think within the first 2 minutes of the stream when I was doing the watch along, me and my mate just looked at each other and thought, bloody hell, Liverpool looks so sharp and
mm,
fast and quick. You can just tell the way they were running, their running stride, the way they're receiving the ball, the way they're popping the passes. Everyone just looked really, really sharp. I was worried basically then for Spurs at that point. I just thought this game is screaming goals. From a Spurs perspective, I thought they did quite well in the early parts in terms of exploiting Andy Robertson. Kulusevski, arguably one of the world's slowest right wingers, was
mm.
penetrating the space in behind Andy Robertson, which kind of shows where Andy Robertson's game is right now. But yeah, I thought from a Liverpool perspective, Szoboszlai was the key player for me because it's the first time where he's understood what he's about as a footballer in a Liverpool shirt. He started to exploit spaces. He was using his athleticism to break in behind Spurs' high line, which then meant that Salah and Gakpo were acting as wide decoys, and then that allowed a lot of space. So they basically stretched out Dragusin and Archie Gray, and then obviously that left space in the middle to exploit. And then Luis Diaz was cutting in off the left, and we've seen this from Arne Slot where he's almost using Luis Diaz as a mixture of like a false nine, inside forward, as well as like a striker. It's
Mm.
quite a unique way of using Luis Diaz, very different to how Jurgen Klopp used him. And then because of his pace, then if he's penetrating into the space in behind, you're constantly going to be able to just feed balls through directly, and he's going to be able to run onto them. And now with Shabazai also doing the same, that was so much pace and penetration into Liverpool's attack, so that it wasn't only relying on Salah to provide that; it was like new guys in the team providing that. So that just gave Liverpool such a potent threat across the forward line. And Spurs with their inexperienced back line, how are they going to compete with that?
Mm.
Hence, you see a side that's conceded 6 goals in a big game.
I think Arne Slot spoken about playing Diaz through the middle in a previous game. I can't remember which game it was. Could be Chelsea, could be wrong. But he basically said that the reason he played him through the middle, or he's starting to play him through the middle, is to draw centre backs out to create space in behind them. And that worked over and over again. And especially, I think he looked at this Spurs team and went, Dragushin and Archie Gray. Archie Gray is a holding midfielder, stroke a right back. So he's going to get dragged out. And he's a young boy. Like, it's only like inevitable. He would have watched a United game and when Hoyland was dragging him around. And Hoyland's movements not that wonderful at times. And then Dragushin, it's like a powerhouse of a centre back. You almost like need someone who's got the brains next to him. The two of those are always going to have problems when you've got Diaz.
Yeah.
And then you were going to speak about Szoboszlai, and I literally the player I was talking about at the start was Szoboszlai because I think he's arrived to the party. And I think to be fair, like me and you have always said, like he's so useful. Like his legs are so useful, his dynamism so useful. But now, like the bit he's added and his goal was an example of that. He picked the space between the midfielder and the centre back, and that's on a transition. But he knew where to be. He knew where he's floating. He wins the flick on, and now you're in trouble because now you've got him, who's probably I would say one of the quickest players to cover ground when the ball is there to be reached, and Salah in possession, and that kind of happened over and over and over again. And I think we did an insight after Tottenham bullied City. Do you remember? And we were saying they're
Hmm.
so soft in midfield.
Yeah.
Liverpool didn't need to. And I think we said at the time, you don't need to win tackles to not be soft. You need to run around to drag the other midfield around. Basuma and Sarr today, if you compare them to that City game, what we said after that game was they bullied City. Today they got dragged around by Szoboszlai.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Because their positioning was slightly higher up. So they were looking to sort of win the ball high up. But Liverpool kind of just bypassed that midfield battle because the likes of Gravenberch were fizzing the ball through between the lines so quickly. So that imagine if you're a midfielder and you're facing the press, if you've pierced that press with a pass straight forward, that midfield is now having to recover
Mm,
back. It's out of position, and then the defensive line is exposed. So Liverpool really smart. They almost kind of said, "We don't want to get into a midfield battle. Yeah, come on to us. We're just going to bypass it. We're going to go straight for the throttle. We're going to just go straight for you." And this was quite strange because people say with Arne Slot, first half he tends to want to control proceedings. What I've learned about Arnie Slot now is he can tweak it based on the opposition. If he feels that his team can absolutely knock this opposition out of the park, or he knows already what their plan is, he will then, even from the get go, he will attack.
mm.
If he feels like he needs to figure out an opposition, then he'll wait till the second half. With Spurs, he kind of read them like a book. So he was like, "This is exactly how I'm going to play this. My plan A, boom," and they just executed it.
It's funny you say that because I was watching a video just then about him praising Spurs 2 days ago when he did an interview and he said the caption Sky put on here was, "How on earth can you play too attacking football?" In the interview, he basically praised Spurs being too attacking, full well knowing that it wasn't going to make a difference to Ange. Ange was always going to do this, but he obviously sat there and said, "You're just inviting trouble because you're coming up against a team that can outscore anyone in the league if the
Yeah.
game's open." We'll come to Ange's tactics in a short while. I think I also want to talk about Liverpool's um, midfield situation because Trent no longer is tucking inside. Um, and that now means the midfield is being relied upon to create. And I thought Trent was unbelievable, by the way, for like 30 minutes. Some of the stuff he was doing was like De Bruyne-esque in his pomp, where the pass to Salah, even the cross, Diaz couldn't miss. The cross was that good.
Oh, the cross was amazing. Yeah.
The technique on the cross, it was like Beckham. Me and you both
Yeah.
watched
Yeah.
Beckham. Like, do you remember when Beckham used to roll it out of his feet and you'd be like, this is a goal? Like, you could
Yeah.
mark the guy in the box, but Beckham was still going to get it on his head.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but what I think is now interesting is he's rotated between Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones, and now he's starting to rotate between McAllister and Curtis Jones, which I know you want to talk about McAllister.
Yeah, I think with McAllister, I think he did really well for the goal. And just touching upon the goal quickly, I think Liverpool, again, another way they exploited Spurs was the aerial aspect of the game. They knew that both these centre backs are inexperienced. They knew that Spurs have a soft centre. And they made Szoboszlai look like he was Marouane Fellaini in his prime. Like the ball was going up for second balls and they're winning the second balls in the box. And they just exploited um, Spurs for that. With regards to McAllister, outside of the goal, he struggled for that moment where Madison nicked the ball off him and puts the ball away for a goal. I think that McAllister is someone who, at times in this slot side, he feels like he I wouldn't say passenger is not the right word to use, but it feels like he's kind of lucky to be in this side somehow is how I feel because he's not really dominating the play. He's not your main conductor or controller
Mm,
in the midfield, um, but he's someone who's there to kind of keep it tidy on and off the ball. But even then, when he's expected to be keeping it tidy, I feel like he gets caught on the ball too much for my liking in these dangerous areas, which tend to lead to goals.
but
So what I'm worried about is going further into the Champions League.
mm,
If he's up against a team that really can go toe to toe with Liverpool, will he be able to, you know, hold his own and be a leader for this Liverpool midfield?
would you say that having an option of a midfielder like him who can balance out the chaos sometimes in possession for sure allows you like what I'm basically saying is like not every midfielder is going to be perfect for every game. Like this game was made for Sabos, like high intensity transitions constantly, lots of space for him to run into. McAllister wouldn't blossom in a game like this.
I think he's the only sort of option you've got with a really calm head.
Mm,
And I know I've said that he gets caught on the ball, but it's almost like it happens rarely, but then when it does, it's like
it's bad.
it's bad, right?
Mm,
But when it doesn't happen, he's the guy you tend to be able to rely upon in possession to not do stupid stuff,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah, and
So I agree with you. Like he's kind of the glue which kind of keeps it all knit
yeah.
together.
But I also agree with you that in the latter stages in the Champions League, when Jude Bellingham is lurking around your ankles, like and Jude Bellingham and Madrid are at it, he's gonna struggle because he's the deepest midfielder normally.
I mean, to be fair, we've said that, but Madrid were really bad when they played Liverpool, and
Yeah.
McAllister was actually quite good in that game. But
Actually, that was one of his best
obviously,
games this season, to be fair.
yeah, yeah. But obviously, it's interesting to see. Obviously, because the further you go into the Champions League, you're up against different types of teams, different types of players, and then if there's a chink there, it could potentially be exploited.
Hmm. Um, let's talk about Ange because he's getting pelters again for being too attacking, for being too naive. Could he play more pragmatic? Uh, first question really is that, is there a world where they don't lose by 3 goals to Liverpool today?
No, Liverpool were easily the better team.
So
Um,
then where do you sit with his tactical approach?
um, so with Ange, I feel like where he goes wrong is I don't think he protects. It's a bit like Pep at the moment where they don't protect the defense
Hmm.
enough. His high line it can be quite suicidal. It's almost like it's a constant high line. He's never ever factoring who his team is playing up against, the opposition's strengths and weaknesses. It's just this is my team. This is how I wanna play.
Hmm.
I also feel that he sometimes gets things wrong in terms of combination out wide. Uh, you know, using a fullback to overlap when a winger's inverted. So if you are going to be all out attack, he needs to get that aspect of the game right
Hmm.
as well. So because that part of his game isn't perfect and the defensive side of the game is nowhere near perfect, then obviously you're just constantly bleeding goals and bleeding results, which is why I think they're 11th in the league
Hmm.
right now. I think he is overall just too naive, um, and I don't think he's going to be the man long term to take Spurs to where they need to get to.
I agree to some extent, but I don't think Spurs are ever going to win the league. Definitely not in my lifetime.
No,
Oh,
so they
unless,
might as well get entertained, right? So
yeah,
which I get what you're saying, but obviously from a Spurs perspective, for them being entertained is okay. We get entertained, but we're still hovering around top four.
but
They don't really want to be hovering around mid table.
but me and you, like, I've watched football for pretty much a similar number of years. Spurs have always been this team. Like
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah,
if
yeah.
you think about your favorite games in Premier League history, I
It's always
guarantee,
about
like, Spurs are gonna,
Spurs are probably in there. Yeah.
yeah. So where I completely get it. Like, he's definitely naive, but today is not the day to kill him for being naive. I don't think. Like, he's played.
Not today. He's got two centre backs missing.
He got Foster in goal, who's
A four
56.
string goal. So most of his back line is out of the picture. So today's not the game I'd want to kill him. Kill him for. Look, secretly, I want Ange to stay. I find him likable. Like I
Mm,
said, I enjoy watching Spurs play. But I can understand a fan's perspective where it's kind of like, I want to be around the top four, etc. And right now we look miles off it. But there is a lot of talent in the team, that is for sure. So I don't think a squad clear out is needed. I just think they need to, for example, what would I do? I would make sure that they bring in one top class winger to like someone who can take over the mantle from Son Heung-min.
mm,
I feel like they're lacking that caliber of player. I would look for a top CDM. Like Basuma's very good on the ball, but I don't think he's a leader off the ball.
mm.
Um, and s- yeah, those two are my two main signings I'd look to bring in, like two big signings in the summer, and those two would be two areas that I would look to target. And that I think would give them structure in terms of spine, and it'd give them like a regular goal outlet type of player.
Yeah, I think for me anyway, I think, like, I like Ange's style of football, and I think in the Premier League, they beat United playing the exact same way, and United had just as many chances as Liverpool, but just don't have the quality. So,
Yeah,
like, this will happen against Liverpool, Arsenal, City, maybe Villa. The rest of the league, you'll probably get away with it. And I think what they're struggling with this season is they've got loads of injuries, and so and they just can't get any momentum whatsoever. And you know me, I'm a huge believer in psychology and momentum.
yeah,
All they needed today was a point. If they got a point, having beaten United, suddenly the next 2 games look winnable. But now, like, everyone's going to keep saying, "Oh, they'll win 4-0 next week, then they'll lose 1-0 to Ipswich," and that
yeah,
becomes like a feeling, and it spreads like a
yeah, yeah.
parasite. Um, and I think he's got to control that a little bit. And I think he's trying, to be fair to him. But there's, I also I agree with you. I think that the squad's got talent, but when I look at the forward line, like Son today, I love Son. He's a phenomenal footballer, but he cannot dribble anymore.
No.
Trent was like outpacing him, and Trent was jogging 90% of the time. The one they do have is Kulusevski, who I know you want to talk about.
Kulusevski, for me, he's too good for Tottenham.
Wow.
This is a guy who should be playing in the business end of the Champions League. Um, I think there's a whole host of top European clubs who'd want someone like a Kulusevski, and I think he's got the football IQ to make it work. I could easily see him playing for Man City. I think if Arsenal didn't have Odegaard, then I could see Kulusevski playing that role. You could probably argue the way Kulusevski played today against Liverpool, you could almost argue, would Odegaard be able to put in that level
Yeah,
of
yeah.
sort of performance? Because Kulusevski, when he raises his game, he almost like flipping out. He can take on like mountains, it feels like. If I would love him at United, the only question is how would he fit into an Amorim system? I don't really know how that works. But
Mm.
in terms of just as a player, as an entity, would I take him? Yeah, 100% I would take him. I think even Liverpool, weirdly enough, like imagine if he was playing in Szoboszlai's position,
Yeah.
you know? So I think he's a baller. I mean, I don't know how old he is. Is he 23?
I think he's at
24?
24 maybe 25. He's
Yeah,
young.
he's still got bloody 7 years at the highest level. So yeah, top player. For me, best position is inside right. I don't like seeing him as a out and out winger. I think there's a ceiling attached to that role. He can do it, but there's a ceiling attached to it. But inside right, it feels like he could be a world class player.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, he had Robertson on strings today. Is there anything else you want to talk about that I missed off? I think you wanted to mention aerial battles at some point.
No, I think we've already touched upon it.
All
Um,
right.
just to recap, Liverpool exploited Spurs' softness in the underbelly, in the spine, by putting lots of crosses in the first half and almost like throwing it in there, knowing that they might lose the first ball, but they're going to win the second ball, and then both goals kind of came through that.
All right.
Those two goals.
Anyway, I'm sure we'll talk more. I don't know. I'm not here actually for the next insight, so we probably won't have insight until the new year. And to be fair, the Boxing Day fixtures aren't as classically good as usual, so we'll definitely see you in the new year. But if you're enjoying the insight, whether on Spotify or YouTube, then make sure you drop a like, follow PyFag as usual, and we'll see you on the next one.